Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
Bom dia. Hello. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us today at the German Pavilion. We are thrilled to have a conversation about grids and storage. We want to accelerate the implementation of the high-impact value add that grids and storage bring when they have financing, and they have policies, and they have solutions that can bring action to the implementation COP today. I'm Julia Souders. I'm the CEO of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council and the co-chair of the Global Renewables Alliance. We are thrilled to talk about the momentum building from yesterday's announcements, where we had 8 ministers speak to support the Global Grids Storage Initiative. And we want to take the momentum from the policy of yesterday and talk to actual action changes in policies to address any barriers we see. So when we come to COP31, we could show our success stories about how we really continue to help build and integrate grids and storage. So really thrilled today to have a panel and really looking forward to the questions and dialogue. So I'd really like to start off with really noting again, the momentum comes from COP29, where 65 countries stood up and pledged their support for this grid and storage pledge. And then we also had 40 additional supporters and over 100 different companies. So the momentum continues every year, and now we're moving from policy to implementation. So I'd like to have us start off with State Secretary Jochen Flasbarth, who the German Federal Minister for Environment, Climate, Action, Nature, Protection, and Nuclear Safety, give some opening remarks. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here. Well, I don't want to complain as I'm a man part of it, but having a male-only panel on the Women's Day is something, but we are working on that. We are working on that. So yesterday I'd been already at the ministerial on grids, and I want to basically speak about what we as German government are doing on this internationally, not talking about the national part. So grids will start, it started yesterday, it will go into the next week when on Tuesday Minister Carsten Schneider will launch a German grid package with partners here at 11 at the Pavilion. So you don't get rid of us on the grids, you get grid from us. Well, as you said, moderator, since Dubai, where we kicked off this process, and I think very meaningful. Many didn't expect at Dubai to get something really seriously done on the energy overall, with the doubling and tripling transition away from, and also on the COP30 plan on accelerated solution on the expansion and resilience of power grids. And why is this so important? During the last years, we were very focused on the renewable facilities on the production side, and rightly so. If you want to triple renewables, then of course you have to invest in solar, in wind, in geothermal, and in others. But more and more we realize that we are getting into a stage where grids are getting more and more relevant, and where we need to avoid that they become the bottleneck in reaching our overall targets. And I just want to refer what I shared with minister colleagues yesterday. During, let's say, the last 10 years, we advocated heavily on decentralized renewable electricity. I've been for 3.5 years at development and just looking at the African continent with still more than 600 million people without access to electricity. This was the right focus because it's the best and cheapest and fastest way to provide electricity to those people. But looking at the overall economies, the national economies, the regional economies, the interconnected regional economies, we of course also have to look at the grid side. We have to build new grids where the energy system is still in development, and we have to adjust the grids, as in my country, where the grids were not designed for a decentralized production side, but more or less on centralized energy like coal, nuclear, and gas. And now our focus is on 3 parts, our grid package. One is to prioritize the grids politically, feeding into the path. We want to do this with partners and the existing institutions working on this. Let me mention again the Green Grid Initiative, the GGI, the Global Clean Power Alliance with the supply chains mission, and the Global Coalition for Energy Planning. Part of our grid package is also an expanded financing part with a loan 138 million euros provided this year. For example, for the IDB in their collaboration on the power transmission acceleration platform together in the LAC region. The Asian Power Grid Financing Initiative in South Africa, together with KfW, we are providing a guarantee vehicle to get private investments unblocked. In Mexico, the distribution grids and grid flexibility, and in Kazakhstan through the ABRD, we are working also on grid connection. So all this, as I said, as part, we are kicking off this year. As everybody knows, once we are starting, Germany will not move away thereafter. We want to make it sustainable, and we are very happy to be part of this global multi-DAO on the grids.
Thank you so much, State Secretary. I like how you wove together flexibility with the 3 pillars, and we actually have policies now in place. So thank you so much. My mantle is now changing into more diversity, so I'm thrilled to announce to stage Mariana Especia. She's a special advisor of the Ministry of Mines and Energy from Brazil. So thank you so much for joining us. The platform's yours.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here talking on behalf of the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil. Hope you are enjoying this lovely weather. But I was rushing from a session to another, and thank you so much for joining the Global Mutirão. And I think this is something that is a very important message that Brazil is delivering to the world. When we started the discussions towards the action agenda, one of the key elements that we saw that we should be pushing and bringing more effective collaboration was related to the expansion and resilience of grids. Last year in Baku, most countries have agreed on advancing on the expansion and also storage systems to make sure that the feasibility of the tripling renewables globally. And we still have many gaps in this regard for different reasons. So throughout this year, we have started a very intense mobilization with very relevant stakeholders from multilateral initiatives with multilateral development banks, governments, and different level of stakeholders joining forces to make sure that we could build a very strong message to the world. And I think this is one of the key deliverables that we are right now here in Belém being able to achieve. And yesterday we had a very, very impressive session, and we could have a very relevant representation from different stakeholders, regulators, system operators, governments, multilateral banks, knowing that we have a huge challenge ahead of us, but knowing that it is feasible to deliver concrete messages and results. From the Brazilian view and perspective, we know that it is possible. It's not an easy task. We need to have the right instruments in place. We need to have the right signaling to markets. We need to have the right financing mechanisms already there. And we know that many countries will need this level of support from the international community. So I couldn't be more than happy to be here today with you all, highlighting and emphasizing, actually calling, this is the last call for action from you all, to join this multirão with us, knowing that actually our task has just begun. We need to have more concrete mobilization in this regard, and we will have this plan to accelerate solutions in full implementation throughout until actually 2028. So this is something that those who are interested in joining forces and contributing, even maybe next month, next year, we are still available to receive concrete and tangible results. And this is something that we really would like to emphasize here today. So we commend the initiative by the German government to join us in this mobilization. Yesterday we had many important announcements coming from the Asian Development Bank, also from the Inter-American Development Bank related to grids, but we need more. We definitely need more. So you can count with the COP30 presidency team to make sure that the right discussions will be in place in forums like today, where we are having. Next week, we still have some time to have more discussions about this. But we really welcome any sort of contributions in this regard. And I really would like to thank the Climate Champions team for all the support that you are having, the German colleagues as well from the German government that also have understood the need that we have in our front. But definitely, this is just the beginning of a conversation. You can also count on the government of Brazil to bring up our knowledge and experience on that to make sure that we will have concrete results coming for the next year. Thank you so much. We hope you can have a great discussion today.
Very, Mariana, thank you so much for your mobilization. Thank you. And do you want to come sit right here? Okay. So thank you, Mariana, your energy and your leadership, bringing together all these different perspectives, to have utilities, governments, multi-development banks, all these different types of perspectives coming to the table, and government officials agreeing on the importance of flexibility, on the importance of policy action. This is enormous. So thank you for keeping the mobilization going so we can have big change and we can keep this commitment so in 2028 we can show our families and friends that we made a real difference. So thank you very much. Thank you. So we've had some great speakers highlight, we're building on this momentum. We took words into pledges and now into action, and we're bringing partners together to make a big difference. So I'd like to ask all of you, and I'm sitting right behind Mark. I'm going to go over here. We're showing flexibility as we speak. It's okay, Secretary, you can sit here. I don't mind standing. There's air over here. I will stand right here. No, but thank you. So I'd just like to highlight, we now have a guide. We have storage. We have flexibility and pledges. Now, what are we going to do as industry? So, Mark, I'm coming to you to kind of ask us about, this is much better. How are you going to take these words and actually make a reality out of going forward? And then can you highlight any barriers you foresee so we can work together of how we're going to implement change? Do you want to say? Oh, microphone. There we go. Mark's thing.
Thank you very much indeed for the question. My name is Mark Howells. I direct something called Climate Compatible Growth, which is a UK aid-funded program that includes Imperial, UCL, Oxford, and Cambridge. And we focus on research, and we focus on trying to crack difficult problems. And it was at the Glasgow COP, in fact, that we were working together to launch the Green Grids initiative. And it's just wonderful to see that unfold into what it is today. The other thing that I think is really important, and I think it's kind of symbolic around grids, is coming up with these new solutions has been a multilateral process. Nobody's had a single, silver bullet, but coming together, I think we have something. And I'd like to talk about that now. So we often hear about the green transition, and the first thing that we hear is renewables. We've got to invest in so many renewables, so much solar, so much wind, etc., etc. But without transmission, there will be no transition. And I'd like to we should start changing the narrative a little bit, and we think about the transition not just to renewables, but the transition to transmission as well. Without reliable grids, it's the case that we simply aren't going to get this fluctuating clean power to customers. And we see issues right now where this is happening. Scotland and the UK produces some of the world's cheapest wind power. But because of the transmission system, that gets exported to Norway. Meanwhile, London has the most expensive electricity in the world because of the transmission constraints that are there. So we need to prioritize transmission. We're simply not going to reach our goals without transmission, and we need to make sure this is clearly part of the narrative. Transmission systems have often been neglected for a number of reasons. In the planning process, it's very easy to point to, nice big pie charts saying so much wind, so much solar, etc., etc. But we don't see the same sorts of things for transmission. So from a planning and academic point of view, we have to change that. That's one thing. But something that's relevant to us in the panel and our desire to get investment into this space is we've seen funding, climate funding, development funding, and so on, being made available for the supply side. We've not seen that kind of funding being made available for transmission. And the reason for that is that the rules around transmission are often complex. They're often quite scattered. And it's the case, especially in developing countries, that they're not fit for purpose. There are, for example, constraints with many of the development banks that say, well, if you're going to invest in something, it must reduce emissions. In the very short term, investing in transmission systems in developing countries will increase emissions. But the fact that the transmission systems are there allow us to invest in renewables and low carbon options into the future. So an investment now might have a small increase in emissions, but in the immediate term, but a massive decrease of emissions in the long term. And the rules haven't allowed us to look past that hump. So the GGI finance principles that have been developed collaboratively by more than 150 experts, they've been signed up to by the German government, by a number of the development banks, and we'll hear a little bit later on some exciting initiatives by the Inter-American Development Bank, change that. They provide a common platform that can be applied for the large-scale flow of finance into grids for both mitigation and adaptation. With that in place, it allows us to unlock what we hope will be trillions of dollars worth of investment into that space. Because of this common framework, we can work together and start to mobilize funds together, mobilize projects together, and start to stack them up. I'd like to say a bit more a little later on about how you can get involved, but want to emphasize again, grids, by their very nature, are a demonstration of multilateralism. The development of these principles with this broad buy-in has been because we've been able to work together on a common problem. And we want to keep that spirit alive. The doors are open. Please come to www.greengridsinitiative.net and join this movement as we move to try and mobilize $1 trillion worth of finance in the transmission system in the future for the climate compatible growth that we want. Thank you.
And I want to highlight, you just tied something really strongly with changing the narrative to what Mariana was saying earlier. This is hard, but if we work together on understanding the value stack and the policies and fit for purpose and how this new narrative works with the right policies and the people behind it, I think we can get through the the fear of this being too hard that we get stuck. And so I'd like to come over to and really kind of hear from Max, who's stepping in for Kate, the UK Special Envoy on Climate from the UK. You're hearing about an initiative that's been in the works. The UK has stepped in as also being a supporter of the pledge. What barriers do you still see that we have to overcome on the next steps? We've got this momentum, but we want to make sure we're doing this right.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for letting me be part of this. I wanted to start just by thanking the Brazilian presidency for the drive on the action agenda, which I think has been a fantastic way of giving a real kind of a boost behind all of these areas of work. When we were involved in COP26, we saw the huge challenge of a lack of coordination amongst international initiatives across a range of different areas in decarbonisation. And that led to the creation of the Breakthrough Agenda, which in a number of different areas has helped kind of really pull together different parts of the international stage to give that kind of coordination across different areas of initiatives. And now the Global Climate Action Agenda does that at a fully kind of macro scale across the whole of the global stocktake, and it's really, really powerful to see that. But this coordination does need to come, it needs to have a clear kind of purpose of why it's there, what it's trying to achieve, a focus on outcomes it's trying to deliver, what's going to happen in the near term, how do we make use of existing resources, etc. From the UK point of view, one of the things we've done is earlier on this spring at the Future of Energy Security Summit, we launched a Global Clean Power Alliance supply chain mission, which is looking at how we can work together with a wide range of partners to really kind of deliver the crucial kind of changes that are needed on the supply chain for the essential energy transitions we're seeing. We see this as directly supporting the grid's pledge, and this is directly about reducing bottlenecks in transmission. We're preparing to start off a series of political and technical dialogues around this. It will look at very specific things like the harmonization of standards. It'll look at potentially shared procurement platforms, for example, in the Caribbean. It'll look at data transparency. It'll look at a range of different kind of elements that will help to drive forward this transition, and we're looking to produce a vision statement out of this. So at COP31, what are we looking to achieve? I think the focus on outcome is exactly that. I'm going to add a little bit of the sort of singing the praise of the GGI, because I think it is an important initiative that helps pull together a range of different partners. We're very proud in the UK to be chairing the Green Grids Initiative. It's now firmly part of the action agenda. It is the host of the Grids Plan to Accelerate. The Coordination Council will be backed by the GGI. And I think the specific things that we look for that to really focus on is kind of number one, scaling up finance. We know that getting finance into grids in emerging markets is going to be critical. Currently, only 20% of grids finance goes into emerging markets, but 80% of the investment going forward needs to be based there. We need to empower regulators. We need to be bringing regulators together to kind of really support the experience and expertise, and pooling regional projects. And we've heard some examples about the Asian Development Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank and their platforms for interconnection amongst those. So those are just some of the kind of practical things that we're looking to support in here. Thanks.
I love the practicality, bringing that the need was identified, an initiative was set up, and now it's funded to really take it to the next step of implementation. I'd like to come to Ronny, to you in Costa Rica, a beautiful country in the middle of Central America. You are the Vice Minister of the Environment and Energy, representing RELAC. You're coming into supporting the pledge and the grids initiative. How do you want to deliver on this to show the success of what Costa Rica can bring to grids and storage? Not working. There you go.
Hello.
Hello. Hola.
Okay. She says Costa Rica is beautiful because she lived in Costa Rica many years ago.
Pura vida.
Thank you so much for inviting to Costa Rica. We really appreciate that we have the opportunity to tell you experience from Costa Rica. It's not bad, it's not good, it's only different. Because at the end, when any country, a country, phase out fossil fuel to produce electricity, it's possible to find out similar our situation. What is the situation? Costa Rica produce maybe 110% from without fossil fuel. Why more than 100? Because we are interconnected with the rest of the Central America. From Mexico to Panama, 7 countries are connected in the system. But it's not exactly a good situation because we have all of the sources are related to clean energy. They have a lot of variation in the production because it depends on the nature. For example, in Costa Rica, we produce 70% from hydro, 15% from geothermal, one of the most high in the region, 16% from wind, biomass, solar. Can you imagine the problem when you have many variation in the sources? But it's possible because more than 10 years, we have not have a blackout in the system. It's incredible. We can deal with, but it's important in order to this forum to talk about the importance of the grid, importance of the transmission, because the backbone is the most important when we have many sources, because the sources from clean energy, there are in many locations in the country because it's impossible. You have to put to development, to build the plant when the resources are disposal. So my experience with this kind of situation, the transmission is not enough because we need a storage system, a strong storage system, because it's important to have the accumulation when we have excess of energy in the system. In order to cut down, to take advantage the excess of the system, we can use for peak shaving, you can use for interchange in the countries, or almost besides, it's possible to storage in order to sell when the market is higher than the another days, another hourly days. So it's our experience. It's not good. It's not bad. It's different because we need to. We don't have many experience in the world about this situation. We have to reinvent how to administrate, how to supply electricity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronny. I love how you gave a real-world example of why the grid and storage pledge is so important, because we need both. And we really need to make sure that we need this flexibility. If you're depending on other regions, other states, other countries to get your power, you want to have that predictability. And this is what you can get with new storage and transmission grids, planning, permitting, financing, and policy change. So this is really important, so thank you for highlighting this. And I want to turn to Harmeet from Hitachi, because yesterday was a big day from the utilities. And Irina announcing, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but it was really big to see how utilities are also bringing financing and commitment to the grid and storage pledge. So can you give a little bit more about the big announcement that UNESA gave yesterday?
Thanks a lot, Julia. And then thanks for the opportunity. So I represent Hitachi Energy. So we're the people who build the grids. In short, we operate in 60, 70 countries around the world, and I just want to share with you the experience from a supply side, because we have a lot of stakeholders from policymakers and utilities and so on. I think the first thing we have to get over is there is a lot of focus, of course, rightly, on energy security, but energy security and energy transition can very much go hand in hand. So there is not about making any choices here. We need them both, and in fact, you can do both at the same time. I think the second point is it's also now a foregone conclusion that clean electricity will drive the energy system of the future. So we need to kind of move on. Whether that goes from 20% to 80% or 70 or 60, it doesn't matter. We have to electrify, and we have to electrify at a rapid pace. The third point I want to make is now that it's a well-known phrase with no transition without transmission, I share a personal anecdote. I was going to the Clean Energy Ministerial in Korea, and my daughter asked me if I knew what K-pop is. And I frankly said no. And she said, well, if you guys need to connect with, today's generation and all the rest of it, you better rethink this no transition without transmission. So she challenged me to come up with something more contemporary, and I said, and I think the reason I use it in Brazil, because it's as applicable here as in Korea, is that no grids, no party, right? So my message really clearly here is that if we want to understand the urgency on the grids, don't take the grids for granted, because that's what we've done. For decades, we've underinvested severely. 2 days ago, the World Energy Outlook came out. We are a fraction of what we should be investing in grids. It was $400 billion. They're saying it should be $600 billion up to 2030. So I think the case is pretty clear. I also want to highlight a couple of points about the grid. We often talk only about grid capacity, and I think that's a fallacy, because at the end of the day, if we look at capacity, we also need to look not just at new capacity, but also what we can get from the existing grid, releasing capacity from the existing grid. The second point is complexity. The grid that we are building cannot be the grid that we've had in the past. You have very different supply side challenges. You have much more distributed power, much more intermittent power. You have many more demand side challenges on the grid. Patterns of consumptions of data centers, and now AI on top of it, industrial electrification, EV, and. So at the end of the day, the grid needs to be much more flexible in addition to being resilient. The good news is that technologies exist. Now, why is it then that we are not deploying these technologies at speed and scale? My company pioneered technologies like HVDC. We're the world's largest builder of transformers. And at the moment, we take a lot of flack because at the end of the day, there are supply chain constraints. But this was bound to happen. Transmission equipment is long-term gestation. Transmission as a sector is long-term gestation. It will take 5 or 6 years to build an HVDC line where you could get a power plant up in half the time. So if we don't think forward, and I think my first ask is long-term, integrated, holistic planning. This is because what does supply chain need more than anything else? We need visibility and certainty. We are not in the business of building hotels and hoping that someone shows up. So at the end of the day, if we don't get clear signals, do we double capacity, triple it? What do we do? And I think as a case in point, we've announced $9 billion of investment, including a new transformer factory just outside Gaurulos for $250 million. But the point is, we need those signals. We need the assurance on the offtake. That's the first thing, is visibility. The second thing, I think, which is very important, is the right policy and regulatory mechanisms. This past topic of project-by-project approach has to change. We have to move from a project thinking to a program thinking. And I think that's the only way we're going to get this done fast. We need more standardization in order to be push things out faster. On top of it, I think what's important is to realize for all countries that these equipment cannot be made everywhere. So you need global supply chains. If we don't leverage global supply chains, this whole ideology of make it here, make it there, we will be suboptimal and we can't even set those factories up fast enough. So I think there needs to be a realism in terms of where we are going with this. And then the business model. We have to enable the TSOs, the DSOs, to be able to make anticipatory investments, to be able to think ahead, and not that we make policies or regulations. And of course, the famous story about permitting, I will not even go there. It took 12 years to clear a project in the United States, and then they want us to deliver it in 3.5. And they're not alone. This is what we see in most parts of the world, that the process for getting these projects off the ground, we don't have that luxury. We cannot afford that kind of time. So give us visibility, give us the policy regulatory support, and enable us with the new business models in order to get on with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Harmeet. And you're also part of UNESA, and they gave $1 trillion. They committed to this by 2030 to help build the grid from the utility side. putting that in the policy, the regulatory components, having regulators say that we will support you in this is huge because it's coming from other sides. I also like how you highlighted electrification. I mean, this is a growing theme for COP31, matching supply and demand because it gets more complex. And I just came from an artificial intelligence, machine learning, hyperscaler conversation. And how does that complexity really get more difficult, but at the same time should help us simplify as well. And I think this is why it's also really exciting that you need to go watch K-pop Demon Hunters and know the song Golden because it's going to be good. But yeah, it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's pretty amazing. Maybe there'll be a dance on it soon. We can tie it together. But I want to turn to to our colleague and kind of look at all the different narratives you've heard. We've heard about sharing the narrative, Anand, and you've heard about the complexity. And I want to know, you are now, Anand Gopal, the founding executive director of the Global Grids Catalyst. And so we have an initiative, we have the policies, now we're getting funding, and you're bringing another angle of funding to this. How does this funding help address some barriers and get us ready for COP31?
Great. Is this working? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Great. It's wonderful to be part of the panel. And so just a quick word on who we are. So Global Grids Catalyst was just created 2 months ago at the UN General Assembly. We were launched by the Sequoia Climate Foundation and several other foundations. So we're a climate philanthropy. Our goal is to mobilize up to $200 million per year from philanthropic sources to modernize and expand grids around the world. And we already are on a very good start along that path. If you count the current funding we have in order to deploy philanthropic capital, it's already above $60 million. So I wanted to sort of highlight the fact that the Global Grids Catalyst's role is to come in with really flexible funds. That's the beauty of philanthropic capital, in order to make sure that grids are there to meet the challenge of the future. And remember, why are we doing this? We're doing this at the end of the day to make the lives of billions of people better. And how are the lives of billions of people going to get better tangibly? It's going to happen when they're able to access the best fuel that humans have ever invented, which is electricity, for all of the services that they need, whether it's for mobility, or for industry, or for cooking, or for heating. And that essentially means that the amount of electricity in the global system has to quadruple over the next several decades in order for us to get there. And our goal is to be able to support the expansion of grids, double investment by 2030, triple by 2040, and we will be there all along the way to fill in the important capacity building and technical assistance, project preparation, and everything else that we need in order to serve that goal. So I have some very exciting announcements today. So you heard the $200 million figure as the goal that we're mobilizing. I'm actually going to respond to the call from our Brazilian colleagues, as well as the hard work that the German government has put in. We are always there to help and catalyze commitments by governments. Our volume of money will never match what governments can put in, but our capital is quite flexible, and it can come in and support and catalyze up to 10 or 20 times the amount that governments put in. So I'm excited to announce a couple of things. Yesterday, I committed that Global Grids Catalyst will put out between $4 and $7 million over the next year in grant funding to catalyze grid financing that governments are going to be able to put in, whoever is able to come in on the Grids and Storage Action Pledge, particularly in partnership, I think, with Germany, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank, among others. Now, today I also want to say that in terms of how we make progress on grids, there's a huge need for innovation. So we're excited to announce $2 million in grants that we will put out on an incubation fund that we're able to catalyze and put in as a pot. The incubation fund is for us to solicit ideas from civil society, from the private sector, from others, in order to help us understand and improve the most innovative solutions for expanding grids. Because we know the big wire solutions, we know how that has to happen, and we're very excited about it. But we also know that there are barriers in how we get those out there, and we want to learn more from the field. The fact is, we actually don't know the answer ourselves. We want to know about other solutions that are innovative, non-wire solutions. solutions for long duration storage, grid flexibility, and everything else. So I encourage you all to look at that. We will post more details over the next week or so, but that's the exciting part of what we are able to announce and commit to today. And over the next year, as we staff up, right now you're looking at the only employee of the Global Grids Catalyst. I'll be hiring staff. We have a focus across the emerging markets and developing economies, quite a lot of focus in Asia and also in Brazil here in Latin America. So thank you very much.
Anand, huge congratulations. One person's already raised over $10 million, so well done. Now this is fascinating to me. We have an initiative, we have changing the narrative, we have focused outcomes, we have developers with actual solutions like product steel, we have mobilization commitment by government to bring and integrate entities together and matching supply chain commitments. We're now getting financing for both utility and private sector and foundations to work with governments. We have the integration component of grid interdependencies, but with willingness to wanting to bring in more renewables and build transmission and storage. Are we missing something? What are we missing, Mark?
So I think we need a couple of really good demonstrators that underpin some principles that can scale. So we can move from the projects to the programs, as you mentioned. We have the ludicrous situation where folk are struggling to mobilize the finance for their projects, and we have massive climate funds that are struggling to deploy their finance. We're working on two large projects, one in Latin America with the Inter-American Development Bank, where we're going to show how you can use adaptation funds to help make sure that when there are droughts in various areas, we can ship large amounts of power from where there is rainfall, so where there's no rainfall and so on. The marginal cost to benefit is massive. In terms of your mitigation, in terms of your adaptation resilience payback, this is phenomenal. Another one is with the African Development Bank, looking through Africa. Africa is going to have this skyrocketing demand with respect to the extraction of critical minerals on the one hand. On the other, it has phenomenal supplies of really reliable baseload electricity in hydro as well as geothermal. Again, the potential for this, not now, but in the future, 10, 20 years' time, when we're in our new energy system to supply green electrons to the materials that we're all going to be using for our new transformed system is massive. So I would like to put forward the idea that we need a couple of really good demonstrators that can then be replicated at scale. Thanks.
That's a great point. Yes, Mariana. Please.
One of the key elements that we should bring also to this conversation, it relates pretty much to the supply chain. We definitely need to take into consideration the fact that we need to advance on copper. Copper.
Copper. Yes.
This is something that we also try to mobilize in another Plants Accelerated Solutions under the COP30 related to the critical minerals for energy transition. Already highlighting that by the end of this decade, we are already going to have a shortage on copper. And this is the baseline for any sort of electrification that we try to mobilize globally. And definitely this is something that we should be talking more about. And Brazil is really keen to help reach this conversation, but this is not an effort that should be taken by only one country. We need to have a concrete mobilization from companies, from financial institutions as well, to make sure that these minerals will be financeable somehow, their resourcing. And definitely this is something that we need to start talking more and more, because we are going to have there are many concrete data showcasing that we are going to be in a very critical situation by the end of this decade if we don't change this properly.
That's a great point. We talk about supply and demand, but what are the tools underneath that and the minerals to actually build everything we need? And I think this is also a unique opportunity to integrate the financing from both utilities, real-time needs today, with the innovative technologies in transmission and storage of how we can have parallel pathways, because we're going to need everything to get to the huge numbers that we heard from the team. Harmeet, I think if you just start talking, it will work. Yep.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I want to build on the comments that we just made. I think what we are still missing is the urgency. I don't know how many more reports we need from UN, from IEA, from everywhere else. We are missing targets. We are going further and further behind. Often we talk about the cost topic. My honest answer, a very naive answer to that is, what's the cost of not doing it? And do we think that if we wait longer, it's going to get cheaper? No, it really isn't. Because the whole world is chasing the same dream. Supply chains aren't going to get easier. At the end of the day, I think the sooner we move on these things, the faster we can get on the journey. I still think there are too many people, and by the way, it's not to say we're not making progress. Of course we're making progress. But in my opinion, the collaboration levels that are required across stakeholder groups, it's no longer, government can no longer be what governments were. They're very much part of the solution. We need those policy and regulatory initiatives. Similarly, collaboration across countries. If we don't build interconnectors, we are missing big opportunities. We are going to waste renewables. Renewable penetration is going to be minimized. We need more cooperation across borders. I mean, even in this region, we've been advocating for a long time, there can be much more regional connectivity in Latin America. And by the way, the stumbling block is not technology. We have the technologies to deliver all of this. The challenges are usually political, geopolitical, and those type of things. So I think we need more collaboration across stakeholders, across geographies, and across sectors. I give you the primary case in point now. Suddenly there's this shooting of demand for data centers. And then on top of it, AI. Honestly, okay, where did this come from? And at the end of the day, if it has come, we need to get a proper handle on what is this demand? How big is it? How much of it is hype? How much of it is real? Because the challenge with grid infrastructure is you have to build forward. We need to be looking at 20-year horizons. We really need to take this topic very seriously. In my opinion, is that urgency is still not where it needs to be.
Harmeet, I love that you said that, the trade-offs. It's so important to say, what do we miss out by not doing this? What savings are we setting aside? And your urgency point goes to Mark's point. We're building demos to prove that this can scale. And to Max's point, okay, we want to get rid of these bottlenecks, so let's put money behind it. And Mariana, you're talking about, okay, the reality is you need nature-based elements to make this happen, and we're trying to provide an ecosystem that we can do this in. I also love that this COP brings in people. We need to build technical capacity and really support a just and equitable transition, and that needs to be incorporated all these different aspects of this. So let's say it's COP 31. We're looking at a very successful COP 30 led by the Brazilian presidency. We're looking at all of these pledges becoming part of the action plan. We've got a fortified storage and transmission grid game plan with implementation policies. We've got some financing. What do each of you want to see as you're looking back saying, we're so happy COP30 did this, and now we're doing this? What is your hope for COP31 by the successes you've all outlined? I'll start with Anand. Yeah, thanks.
I think to be I'm a big believer in implementation, which I think Brazil has it's not sexy, but it's actually important, yeah? I mean, it's easy to come in with an announcement. But following on from the grids and storage pledge from COP29, coming in with commitments on how to implement it, what I would love to see is if our target is 25 million new kilometers of grids by 2030, by 2027, we should be about at least 40% of the way there, hopefully longer. Yeah. So I would like to see whether that is actually moving and whether there's clear progress on that. And look, I think new wires take a little bit of time, so I'm willing to be a little bit tolerant of that. But at the same time, everyone should be leaning in on the whole acceleration and growing of capacity. Existing grids have huge capacity that's untapped right now. If we can at least see that governments around the world and countries and grids around the world are able to tap much more of what they currently have on the lines and see progress relative to today from there, then I'm very excited about what we might see on COP31. I'm also a big fan of Australia, if they are the COP31 host, considering an electrification target. A lot of the world's focus has been on the generation side. if you also have targets on how much of the final energy now is being used by electricity, that helps grids in between. So then we can make sure that we're not just supplying unknowing demand, we're supplying known demand. And that's really, really important. Thanks.
Very nice. It's like,
Just to pick up on that thread, I would go back to saying we don't even need demonstrations and pilot projects anymore. I mean, these are tried and tested technologies. I give you an example. HVDC is now 70 years since we innovated on it. So we don't need pilots. We have already started building multi-terminal projects, which will allow for future DC overlay grids. So that's not the point. And again, it needs that vision. I give you two examples from Brazil. Okay, when we were working on the Itaipu project all those years and decades ago, it was so visionary. It was so visionary, and everything worked, and it still works, right? We built the Rio Madeira link. I mean, again, you just need to execute. And I mean, as the saying goes, a strategy without execution is simply hallucination. And I think we've spent too much time talking, and at the end of the day, thinking about all the risks and all the reasons not to do it. So my honest feeling on this is we need to act now, and we need to act together. Otherwise, this game is lost for all of us.
so you want to see a lot of contracts signed by COP31. Got it. All right. Go ahead, Max.
Shall I pick up the thread here? Yeah. So, I mean, I see this at this COP. We've seen a number of emerging markets that are accelerating their investment in renewables in a massive way. We've really been seeing over the last 12, 24 months some really fast acceleration of the adoption of renewables. I think what we'd be looking at the next time is seeing the similar increase in grids. Because I think we've, really the story now is that renewables themselves, the supply is kind of really taking off. But quite a lot of that is distributed. It's not connected to grids which are capable of taking, those new sources of power. So by the next COP, we'd love to see, that really changing in terms of the infrastructure to support that growth.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. Do you want to go? Go ahead. Juggling microphones. Yes. Okay. Ronny.
In order to contribute the discussion, according to our experience, there are maybe 3 or 4 topics very important in order to get the meta. First, the public policies is necessary to give the confidence to the actors. Second, stop the corruption. The corruption is a problem in this kind of situation because we need to have a social focus on the humanity, on the person. And it's important to involve all the actors. For example, academic system, finance, private sector, public sector, because all of them is the only solution when we try to supply energy for industry, for domestic application, for indigenous person. It's important to involve all together in one vision.
Ooh, I like that. COP31, one vision with humanity at the center of it. So, Mark, Mark wants to go first, and then, okay.
No, I just would like to say that it is important for COP31, for countries actually, and here building on what we have learned in Brazil, we need to have a coordinated approach. So for example, during the past 10 years, and Brazil is a very renewable country, the power grid, we definitely learned by doing many things. We needed to run after the renewables. So we always had this in mind. We need to bring the energy to the load centers in our country, which had many kilometers of distance and so forth. So this has entitled us to go for different approaches in terms of energy planning processes that gives the right messages for regulators, for system operators, for the financing institutions to support the financing mechanisms for these projects. So during the past 10 years, we have doubled the installed capacity of renewables in Brazil. And this movement made us to have also, following this process, 57,000 kilometers of transmission lines being built in our country. It is around of the earth. It's quite a lot. And we know that for the next 5 years, we will need to have more 30,000 kilometers of new transmission lines just to provide all the energy to different places. And this integrated approach is something that is really missing for many countries. So we should not overlook the value of providing support for many countries to understand the value of getting these interconnections between the power generation processes and the transmission process. We have implemented many different mechanisms, energy auctions, transmission auctions, many different mechanisms that made available those energy and those resources to our whole country. And it's not an easy task. This is something that we should bring more concreteness for countries. And definitely we are bringing this community to help build on that as well, knowing that this is missing for many different countries globally.
No, thank you so much. I just noticed my clock on here is 5 minutes slow. So I was excited we had time for questions, but I want to be respectful. I know, Vice Minister, you need to go, so if you need to run. Muchas gracias por todo, muy amable. Y felicidades. All right, Mark, hasta luego. Oh, yeah, could we do a quick photo really quick? Could we do a quick photo? Yeah, is that what you said? Photo? Yeah, okay. Mark, what's your question? We can. This is a new kind of panel. Mark, what's your question? We can answer it while we're talking. Go ahead. Thanks. Yeah.
So I live at home with 2 teenage daughters. I almost never get the last word, so I'm going to savor this, but I'll be very, very fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's take the photos first.
Yep, thanks. Buenísimo. Okay. Vale. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll take it. It's okay. We can't wait to see more transmission and storage be built in Costa Rica. We'll see you at COP31. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Mark. We've got a minute.
Very quickly, the very final thing from myself. Our job, and I think our job as a community, is going to be to synthesize what's out there, simplify it, supercharge it, and scale it. I don't for a second want to contradict what you said earlier on. I agree with everything, apart from what we do need is we need a couple of very good examples of how we can unleash climate finance to make the profit motive stronger. Now, once that profit motive is stronger, I think we really need to be able to work together to create a common platform to get information to governments quickly. And I would really strongly implore folk to join something called the Energy Transitions Playbook that's being put together. That's there to signpost to the various technical assistance offers that are there. Finally, what I would like to see at the next COP, and I think we're all in agreement, less meetings and a couple of fantastic projects that just change the narrative, change the way that things are being done. Thank you.
Mark, I love that. And in closing, your focus on synthesizing is so big. I haven't heard that much, and I love that because it's the profit narrative, it's the environment narrative, it's the people narrative, it's the humanity narrative, it's the solution narrative that transmission and grids provide together with the right people in the room to build the right projects in partnership. So thank you all so very much. Wonderful opportunity, and I can't wait to see you at COP31 when we get to brag about all your success stories. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, all.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.